Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a minute. Of course, the AFL and NRL seasons are finished, and that does mean we are in the little lull period before cricket season where we don't usually have a lot of news to talk about. But we did have something over the weekend, not a sporting event. It was, of course, the Queensland state election. And we have got a new government in the state of Queensland, of course, the Liberal National Party winning a majority in the parliament in Queensland. And while that wasn't necessarily a surprise, it has been on the radar all year that the Queensland Labor government was going to be voted out. It does have potentially massive implications on the 2032 Olympic Games in Brisbane. The election itself wasn't as one-sided potentially as people thought, but it does look like the Liberal Nationals are going to win around 52, 53 seats and beat out Labor, who will hold around 33, 35. And we did get the new Premier, David Crisafulli, coming out on Sunday morning and putting the QSAC redevelopment on the agenda. Of course, this is the Queensland Sports and Athletics Centre in Brisbane in the southern suburbs, around 12 kilometres south of the CBD. It was the 1982 Commonwealth Games Stadium, and it is at this point still the planned venue for the 2032 Olympics in terms of the athletics and the track and field events. That plan was announced by the Labor Party earlier in 2024, where they scrapped the Gabba redevelopment. They ignored the potential to go to Victoria Park. The Gabba would have cost $2.7 billion. It would have been a total knockdown rebuild, and Victoria Park was quoted at around $3.4 billion, a completely new stadium built in a parkland area not too far from the CBD. It is a similar model to what you get with Optus Stadium in Perth. You do have plenty of room around the stadium for people to congregate. You do have the train line running past that area, plenty of open spaces. It does tick a lot of boxes. But of course, the price tag did put the government off. They said we want to do a low budget Olympic Games and go to the QSAC. It was going to be a $1.6 billion renovation, and it would see the ground temporarily turned into a 40k stadium for the Olympics and then be converted back into a 14,000 seat athletic stadium after the Olympics. A $1.6 billion temporary stadium, of course, did not go down well with the Queensland public, and it has long been speculated that at this election the Liberals would come out and announce what the plan is going to be. So we did have Crisafulli coming out on Sunday morning, and he said that redeveloping the QSAC would be going backwards. And he also agreed with the former Labor Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk, who's saying that the QSAC plan was ridiculous. Of course, she was the mastermind behind getting the Olympics to Brisbane. Originally proposed that the Gabba would be part of that, and then we did have Palaszczuk stepping down as Premier and Stephen Miles coming in and saying we're not going to do that, we are going to go to QSAC. And the Olympics are sort of seen as Palaszczuk's love child, and it is her little passion project, so she has come out and said we want to do it right if we are going to do it. So she is speaking out against her former political party there. And Crisafulli saying, I might just allow the former Premier, of course Palaszczuk, to be able to put her point of view across and I'll put mine. And he's saying within 100 days, Queenslanders will see a plan that they are proud of, and in doing so, we can restore faith in that process. So if you read between the lines here, he is saying that the QSAC is not going to happen. Thank God for that. And the Liberals said that we are going to do a 100-day plan where they would announce what they're doing in terms of a lot of the infrastructure projects. So you would think if they can stick to that timeline by around the end of February, we should have an outcome in terms of the stadium situation in Brisbane. But it's not quite clear whether that is going to be the Gabba or whether that is going to be Victoria Park. It does seem like the narrative in the last few weeks has tilted back slightly in favour of the Gabba. If you believe the numbers, it is around $700 million cheaper. You do also have the Cross River Rail project there, so there is going to be a train station right outside. It does make a bit of sense in terms of that, but if you look at the Gabba, it is surrounded by residential streets, it is surrounded by a school, and it's sort of pigeonholed into that area with the two roads on either side. Would be a big disruption in terms of the surrounding areas when you compare it to a Victoria Park, where it's just a parkland and then you can build the roads. You can build the rail and the areas for people to move in and out of fairly easily without disrupting businesses and residents in the area. But they're sort of in a difficult position, the Liberals, because they don't want to spend too much, because they did criticise obviously getting the Olympics and spending so much on it initially. But then they're saying we want to do it right. We don't want this to look cheap and nasty. So it does make sense they do go with the middle of the ground option in terms of doing the Gabba. We will expect to see a 50-55k stadium. Of course, we had the Brisbane Lions coming out after they won the premiership. They said we want a new stadium. We're selling out the Gabba. We don't have enough seats. There isn't enough corporate hospitality. We are leaving money on the table in terms of revenue that you are going to generate from ticket sales, from corporate boxes, all the rest of it. And of course, we have also got the cricket season coming up. The Gabba does get a test match this year, but in a couple of years they are actually missing out. There is only 4 tests in that particular summer, and they are going to be played in Perth, Adelaide, Sydney and Melbourne. Of course, all those cities have stadiums that are much better than the Gabba. And we have also got Stephen Miles staying on as a Labor leader. Even though he lost the election, he did only come into power around 12 months ago. So it is likely in terms of the Parliament floor, he is going to be pushing for the QSAC that he did propose. And he is going to come out and say, look, you're spending way too much. The state can't afford it. The taxpayer can't afford it. And it is going to be a contentious topic for the next 5 or 6 years, of course, until the stadium is built and the Olympics are underway in around 8 years. Christopher Foley said he spoke to Anthony Albanese about the Olympics. He said that they spent a considerable amount of time talking about the Olympics and that we intend to speak directly to the Federal Sports Minister, Annika Wells, who is a Queenslander, and I reckon we can get a good outcome. That is a quote from Christopher Foley. Of course, he didn't commit either way on the campaign trail, but he has said the QSAC is a, quote, thought bubble and an embarrassment. So definitely reading between the lines, we do think that there is going to be a good outcome in terms of stadiums, maybe not a good outcome if you are a taxpayer in Queensland or even an Australian taxpayer, because the federal government is going to be funding a fair amount of the investment in the Olympics. There has been a $7.1 billion funding package agreed between the federal and Queensland governments, but you do have the $2 billion Brisbane arena there that is going to be hosting the swimming events. We do have some renderings. It is a very nice looking arena. It does rival a lot of what we see over in the USA. And that venue, presumably after the Olympics, they are going to dismantle the pool. It will be hosting basketball events, probably concerts, and you never know, maybe some tennis or something to that effect. So that's going to cost $2 billion. If we assume the Gabba redevelopment progresses, that's another 2.7. So you have almost committed $5 billion to those 2 venues. And that's notwithstanding upgrading all the other minor venues, upgrading the transport, upgrading the airport, upgrading the general infrastructure in the city, maybe building a few hotels. Of course, the Athletes Village, it is a massive event, and $7 billion for that does seem a little bit optimistic, that's for sure. And we have also got the former mayor of Brisbane, Graham Quirk, coming out and saying we need to go to Victoria Park. We need a clear greenfield space with a 55k capacity stadium. The Gabba is not fit for purpose, and obviously the QSAC obviously not up to standard as well, according to the former mayor. And he is saying that the Victoria Park proposal ticks the box for the Olympics. It does tick the box for the Lions and also cricket going forward. So we will wait and see what happens when this 100-day plan is released. The LNP will rule for a 4-year term until 2028, late 2028, you would think. Of course, by that point, we will be less than 4 years out from the start of the Olympics. They will need to have started building the stadium by then, that's for sure. So really, we'll know the outcome of this in the next 100 days. And it does seem like the Gabba is maybe edging ahead of Victoria Park at this point in time. That is going to be all we're going to have time for today, guys. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.